please.
Hi, I'm Derek Smith. I'll be attending Harvard in the fall. My question is that with much of the congressional internet legislation being challenged in courts, such as the Decency Act being struck down in the district court, where do you see internet regulation going in the next couple of years?
Oh, the internet regulation is so difficult because it is the internet, because you're up there in a World Wide Web. What we can prudishly decide to not put up there, other nations can and will. So what do you do about it? It's a very difficult question. I'm not sure I know the answer. I don't sit on that committee. I've not heard of the testimony on that. I am a free trader by heart. I believe in freedom. I strongly believe in letting people do what they, have the freedoms that they are entitled to under the Constitution. And whether we have the right even to put certain kinds of things. On the other hand, I don't want to have a problem with my children getting into, I wouldn't want to have a problem with my children getting access to things where they could be harmed.
Indecency aside, but if you take a look at free trade, what about the issues with intellectual property and copyright? Do you think that cryptology is the answer for that, or just further congressional regulation?
Tell us what cryptology is, for those who...
Well, all I'm familiar with is the Clipper chip system that Congress has supported, et cetera. It's just basically to encode information. There's a public and a private key, et cetera. But I've just heard that intellectual property is very tenuous, and while you want to keep everything free in terms of trading, if things are being stolen, how would you propose to try to attack that?
Well, intellectual properties it's very, very difficult, and I don't, there are computer geniuses who are doing things like that. I don't even begin to know how they do it, but encoding and encrypting in various ways is one way. We couldn't be too good at it if hackers are able to get into the Pentagon and places like that we seem to want to not even allow planes to fly over. So we've got a long way to go if we think we can protect. People will have to figure out their own ways to, I think, at this point, just to secure their own intellectual property.
Hi.
I'm Rochelle from HD Woodson. I'm a graduate, and I wanted to know your stand on education. And with the future budget cuts and the ones that we've had recently, how do you feel it will survive in the future?
Well, I'm kind of glad you asked that question, Rochelle, because the budget cuts in education, I hope, will go to cutting a bloated bureaucracy. We've been putting more and more and more money into education and not getting a whole lot for our money. I'm a teacher. I've also been a college professor. But I taught math at the junior high level. I taught science. And I have to tell you that it's hard to get a lot of equipment sometimes. As a PTA president, I had to fight to get enough money just to put a rug on the floor so the teachers could sit down on the floor to read books to the kids. It's important for us to put the money where it counts. And if we're cutting the budget, I think the amount of money we've taken out, we can survive so far just fine. Because what we have to do now is go back and look at what we're spending the money for and put it where it counts. Put it where our students are going to get the most bang for the buck.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Rochelle.
Do you feel Congress needs to become more involved with the community as far as education and visiting the schools to make sure that we get the things that we need?
I think Congress needs to be involved with making sure that that communities get control of education and control and bring up the levels. Every time I see community schools, every time I see parents involved with the education of their kids, every time I see a community as a whole banding together and saying, we're not going to take it anymore, we are going to make this school a good school, they don't need outside. What they need is enough money just to get teachers, just to get books, just to get the parents there and get the kids there. It works. It works. And it works because there's a community will to make it work. We can do that. There's an attitude that's been for 40 years, I don't know how much longer, an attitude of, let's just throw money at it. We'll make it better if we just throw money at it. Well, we've thrown money at education for I don't know how many, the last 20, 30 years, and we don't have an increase in SAT scores. We don't have an increase in SAT scores. Overall, we're not doing better. We need to make sure that you students, now all of you here are obviously cream of the crop, or you wouldn't be here today. But there are students who are having a hard time, and it's not their fault. And we need to reach those students. But throwing money at those schools where the administrations get the money and it doesn't get down to the school isn't going to be an answer.
Are there any specific programs you would highlight that you think work very well and maybe could benefit from increased spending? And then there are any you would point out that you think are failures that maybe it's time to try something new?
Oh.
Education programs, obviously. Yeah.
I would have to sit down and go over some of the things. For instance, I personally love Head Start. I think the outreach that we have with Head Start is excellent. I think the programs that allow handicapped children, that get children up to a level that where they can get up to a level where they can be mainstreamed. I will go to bat every single time for blind children and children who are hard of hearing, because it's difficult if you're blind to be in a kindergarten situation. It's difficult if you cannot hear to be with your peers. You need to start out and be brought into that situation. So we need preschool education for those children. I think there are some programs where you have children who are very bright, who need, those are wonderful minds I think sometimes we lose because we don't identify them and we don't let them move ahead quickly. If we can do that, we are as a nation enhanced.
Okay, who's next? Anybody in the audience surprised to be referred to as cream of the crop today? No.
Hello, my name is Maya Alston, and I attend Benjamin Banneker Academic Senior High School here in the district. And my question is also about education. Generally, I've heard that the Republicans, and this is, like I said, a generalization, support the voucher program or system, whereas students in the public school receive their allotment of money and they can attend school wherever they like. I'd like to know if you support that, or if you do, why, and if you don't, why not?
Would you hold on to the microphone and tell us your view after we hear the Congresswoman's answer? Thanks.
I voted on the D.C. bill to allow that vouchering because I thought it might be an interesting way from a microcosm just to see if vouchering would work. Vouchering is something that a lot of people want because when you think about, if you don't live in a city, if you live out in a very sparsely populated area, and you personally don't feel your schools are doing the right job, you want the school to do a better job, and you know that over the next mountain, if you can get your kids there yourself, that it'll be okay. So I don't. If I had to vote on it right now, I would. I'm not sure what I'd do. I really feel we need a strong public school educational system, because that is where we started from. On the other hand, there are extraordinary circumstances where vouchering may work. So we might might need a combination of the both. And I'm not trying to equivocate here, but I'm simply saying the problem with government and the problem with passing laws is that one size doesn't fit all. One size needs to be changed and maneuvered, and you know, we need to add little pieces and bits and things so that we can have people in one situation have their needs addressed while people in another situation can get what they need in another way.
What about your idea as far as vouchers go? You think it's a good idea? You know, if you can relate some of your personal experience to it where it would have helped or hurt.
Mm-hmm. Well, in my opinion, I think it's a wonderful idea for a lot of students, because in the district, some of our schools are excellent and some, well, I won't say, but I'll say that I go to an excellent school. So for me, it would not be something, a road that I would need to follow. But for some students, their schools leave them wanting more and leave them needing more, and they don't feel as though they're being prepared as well as they could if they could receive a private education or attend a school like the school that I attend, which is almost like a private school, but it happens to be public, but it's highly selective. And if they cannot attend a school like I attend, I think they should be given the money to attend the school of their choice.
How do you get into your school? Do you have to apply, or how does
you
it
have
work?
to apply. You have to go through an interview process. There's an essay portion. You have to be recommended by people from your community in your school.
But no extra tuition, it's part of the public
No,
school
there's no
system?
tuition. It's part of the public school system.
But so your school is in a way, your school is a banner school or something. It's something that other schools can look up to.
Yes, it's
But
an
what
academic
about,
high school.
my concern is, what about the other students who can't get into your school?
See, that's
what do they do?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think sometimes is disclosed pursuant, and they would like to attend a school like Banneker, but they can't. So I think that they should be given the opportunity to exploit the private school sector, because that may be what's going to prepare them more if they cannot attend a school like Banneker.
But what if they can't make it to a private school? My
if you have-
problem is
most
you
of the-
can't always make it into a private situation.
I understand
We've
that,
got
but
to
if
have
you're-
something open for public.
I understand that, but what I'm asking is, then I have a question for you with the voucher program. If a student's given a voucher, do most private schools say, well, even though you have the money, I'm not going to allow you to attend? Is that what happens? You have to be accepted at a private school, or
I
if you
guess
have the
every
money,
plan
can you attend?
could have different
It would be different plans, but there still has to be a base education system in the nation available without charge to anyone who walks through the door. It would be wonderful if we could make that a wonderful school system, as an excellent school system. But that's just pie in the sky. So for me to say, yes, I would back vouchers, fine, but not vouchers to exclude the public school system. We still must have that system available so that these children get a chance. We don't want to lose anybody. I'm greedy. I want every young mind to get a chance.
Okay, what young mind is next?
Uh-oh.
And here is your chance.
My name is Ashley Eversole. I attend St. Albans School. I was just wondering, with the programs you were talking about to increase monetary funding for small business and to increase funding for education with voucher programs, and also on your biography it said you supported such programs as Meals on Wheels, but you also seem pretty hardcore on reducing the deficit. How do you plan to do those two things in conjunction?
We cut a lot of government waste down, and by gradually, first of all, we cut down a lot of waste. I'm of the opinion there are several departments, a couple of departments anyway in government, we can cut down to the point where we could almost cut them out.
You want to name names? What departments do you have?
Well, I'd like to see the Department of Energy cut way down to the point where it's practically out, because it was not a department we ever had over the course of generations. It was created when we had an oil crisis. We don't have an oil crisis. There are some things that they do that could be spun off to other departments, and I quite frankly don't think we need a secretary there. I think we can get all of the money out of that agency and put it to other uses. There are the Department of Commerce has duplicating agencies. There are duplicate and replicating agencies all over. Department of Commerce has 3 or 4 weather agencies. Well, what if we got it down to 1? It seems to me that would be adequate. We have better technology now than we had back then when these things were set up. Commerce was set up, in fact, for the states to do interstate commerce. Quite frankly, we're now in world commerce. So do we need to have this agency doing interstate commerce? I think we really need to take a look at that. And I think we need we really need to spend our money more wisely. And if we can shrink down the amount of money we spend, we don't have to have fat staffs. We don't have to have fat spending. We don't have to have people driving around in limousines. An ordinary car would do. I drive my own car, and I think that there are a lot of people that are around on Capitol, not on Capitol Hill, but in some of the areas of government, and who better go nameless, that are riding around in limousines, who could go without the limousines. Let's get rid of them. Let's get government back to reality. Let's make government make sense.
Could you give us specifically your view on welfare, and also just this arose in your answer, how can you justify eliminating the Department of Energy when there's such a concern over the environment and finding alternative fuels and that provide less pollution, and also with the idea that one day fossil fuels will be depleted?
Well, are you implying that the only place doing research on fuels is the Department of Energy?
No, but...
Well, okay, let's clear that up. There's a lot of people doing a lot of research on that, and the Department of Energy doesn't need to do that.
What was
They
the
can
first part of
cycle
your...
that out.
I was just asking specifically for your view
welfare.
on welfare.
Yeah.
Oh, my feeling about welfare? My feeling about welfare is we've gotten to a point where we're giving a hand out instead of a hand up. We've put people in a situation where they can't save. If you go out in my state and you get a job and you start earning enough money, you get taxed. You can't have a savings account. If you start having a savings account, you're back on welfare because you can't earn enough. It takes a while to get your sea legs underneath you if you economically haven't been able to do it. You have to start slowly. And I believe very, very strongly in educating people. I believe strongly that if we can educate people appropriately, not everybody has to go to college. We have a very big need for really good mechanics, good machinists. We have a need for these people in the United States. It's hard to fill them. There is a business in one of my little towns who said to me, please, can you find me some people? This woman is making tiny little pieces that go into computers, and she's trying to find, she has jobs going, begging, because she's trying to find people who can do the simple math that it takes to do these jobs. Now, this is not, it's high school math. I mean, it's not college level math. But if we could take someone who has the mental capacity, who's on welfare, and train them. Just think of our model. Our model is to bring people together, especially women with children, and let half the women go off and get some training while the other half learn how to do daycare, because we need daycare, and we will continue to need daycare. In addition to that, we have abused children. And if you are from a poverty level family, our level of abuse is higher. So we're hopeful, I'm hopeful that this Republican model, where we're bringing these women together and teaching daycare and teaching them how to do, bringing them up so they can pass their GREs and get good, decent jobs. We're doing several things here. We're teaching them to be moms. They can be certified at daycare, and they can pass their GREs and get jobs. And then they can get themselves off of welfare. Isn't that a good model than constantly giving them money?
Okay, who is next?
Hello, I'm Javen Early, and I attend Benjamin Banneker here in the district as well. My question, Congressman Kelly, is that as a congresswoman, you have a duty to represent the citizens in New York who elected you, as well as the party that you belong to. And as an individual, you have your own views. And earlier you stated that even though you are a member of the Republican Party, you still are pro-life. How do you weigh all of these? Excuse me, pro-choice. How do you weigh all these responsibilities, and how do these help you decide what you're going to do in your work?
In general, I first weigh what my district, the people in my district tell me. My district is pro-choice, but I personally am pro-choice. So in that, I'm very lucky. It would be a much more difficult decision for me, but my district is pro-choice. With regard to the rest of it, I weigh always the needs of my district first, and then I look at the needs of the Republican Party. because the people paying my salary are the people in my district. They elected me, and they want me to be their voice. And I feel very strongly that I must be their voice. So I go home every weekend, and I spend 3 or 4 days listening. So I bring that voice down here.
Have you encountered any examples where your personal, strongly held viewpoint was in opposition to the majority of voters in the 19th District of New York?
Well, there have been a couple where it's a sort of a, yeah.
Can you give us an example and how you resolved
I knew you'd
it?
ask that.
I have to. It's my job.
The minute I'd say something, do I want to talk about it? There are basically, there are some things where I've been anxiously trying to work to get the businesses in my district to stay in my district. We're losing jobs. I represent the world headquarters of IBM, and IBM downsized heavily in my district. We lost 14,700 jobs. Do you know what that means in New York? 14,700 jobs. And right at the edge of my district, General Motors just decided to downsize a couple of years ago, another 6,000 to 7,000. The people in my district need jobs. I feel it's my job to get them jobs. And this brings me into conflict sometimes, because people will say, well, you're down there talking to big business. Well, of course I am. I'm talking to big business. I want them in my office because I want to know if they've got jobs. And I'm pretty awful about it. Sometimes when they come in, I'll say, oh, you manufacture this? Well, who manufactures your labels? Have you know, has anybody over there, any small businesses you think would like to move to New York State? It's getting better in New York State. Because we need the jobs. We will reach out. And sometimes there are people who are angry at me about that, because I will talk to the businesses, and it's not clear. So if any of you are out there, that's what I'm doing.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Jessica Simonoff. I go to National Cathedral School for Girls. I understand that you're more involved in the business and economic side of things, but my question is about Whitewater. I was curious, as a Republican representative from New York, what your thoughts were, generally speaking, about the whole case. Was it worthwhile? Was it necessary? And what did you think of the outcome?
I'm on the banking committee, and I spent my quote summer vacation, August. We sat in the congressional Whitewater hearings. So I was privy to a lot of what was going to go on. We were asked not to bring much of it forth, and to its credit, much of what we knew did not get brought forth until the trials actually took place. The fact that these people were convicted means that the Whitewater situation was bad. When you consider that it was your tax dollars that went to bailing out those institutions, when you stop and think that in that state there were over 200 savings and loans at the start of I think it was the 80s, and there were something like, I don't know, maybe 6 left, and your tax dollars bailed out. That was awful for the state that size. If that were New York, that's different. But we had all banks failing all over the place. Florida, Texas, California, and here in Arkansas. More than 200 banks went down. Proportionately, that was way out of whack.
Will Whitewater be a campaign issue in the presidential race?
I have no idea. I have no idea. If it goes to the general moral character, it possibly will. If it's one of those things where we're talking about just the brouhaha, the dust storms, and I think people are fairly smart about seeing through. I may be wrong, but I really think people are beginning to see through political ads. They're pretty sharp. People read the newspapers. They see through the political ads and the noise.
Where would you like to see the line drawn? You bring up this question of character and these personal trait issues. As someone who is in the public eye and has to campaign against someone who may raise questions about you on a personal level, where would you like to see the line drawn? What do you think is fair? And as a campaigner, where do you draw the line in raising issues about or against your opponent?
Well, I'm not sure when you say what is fair. I think everything about us that we have out there as a public official becomes something that people look at because we are public officials. It's unfair. I am a public official, but it's unfair to hit my husband. It's unfair to go after my children and my granddaughter, 2-year-old granddaughter, and say she's not fully toilet trained or something. I mean, but things get that stupid. That's wrong. That's wrong. You can go after what you think a candidate stands for. You can go after, I think, the ethical things that a candidate stands for. I think that if there's been immorality, you can go after that. Because that's something that the public has a right to know. But when you go after personal things where you're going behind into the family, I would draw the line there. But I do want to say very strongly that whatever the general public, I feel, puts up with in its government officials, the level of that ethics and morality is going to reflect what the general public will accept in and of itself. So it's good if they ask questions, and it's good if we bring Whitewater to the fore, and it's good if we continue to ask people questions, because I think it's important.
Okay, who is our next questioner? Hi.
Hi, Congressman Kelly. My name is Mike Pearson. I attend Emory University, and my question was more towards the banking side of things. With the recent trend seemed to be as banks becoming larger and larger and more mergers and banks really taking over regions. I was wondering what happens when these smaller banks are having to, it seems like, cut corners, cut policy in order to garner business. And I was wondering what do you think that's going to do to the banking industry as a whole and to the economy?
It's a very interesting thing. We last week we're looking at the Glass-Steagall bill, which was we were having the first, possibly having the first look at the original an original banking bill. It hadn't been touched since 1933. It turned out it was such a hot potato, it was withdrawn. It's not going to go to the House floor, based on some of these issues, because what most people don't know about banks is that banks aren't just a bank, a corner bank anymore. They represent insurance companies, they represent security companies. When you go in and you deposit money in a bank, before you go to sleep that night, that same transaction's in Hong Kong earning money for somebody else. It's the way these things are moved, and because it's all done 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's a whole different game than it used to be. It's not physical bills, and you don't go and see the nice man that used to be the manager of your bank. That's community banking, and that will always exist. But even at community bank levels, they're doing a lot of different kinds of banking, electronic banking.
The age of the ATM.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we're out of time.
I'm sorry.
One of those awkward moments in television. It happens. Congresswoman Kelly,
thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. I want to let our viewers, thanks to you as well for your questions and comments. I want to let our viewers know that next week, our season finale for this school year, you're going to hear from the other side of the aisle. Congressman Cleo Fields from Louisiana will join us. Hope you will as well. Thank you. This program was produced by the Close-Up Foundation, celebrating 25 years of education for democracy.
The Close-Up Foundation's weekly program can be seen on C-SPAN each Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time and Fridays at 7 p.m. The program also airs on our companion network C-SPAN 2, Saturday mornings at 10 Eastern Time.
$586